Hear ye, and welcome to the Royal Geek Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Rollison, also known as T-Roll, and tonight I am joined by my very good friends. First of all, we have Justin Sandoval, a.k.a. Sandy, and we also have Anthony Amato, who we like to call Shamato. These are my two fellow nuclear scientists here on this special podcast edition, where we are reviewing the movie, not the movie, the film, the spectacular film.
The cinema experience.
The cinema experience
Yep.
known as Oppenheimer.
Yeah, man.
But of course, before we review it, how you guys doing?
Yeah, I believe I can speak for all of us here when I say this, but very tired.
Yeah.
Very tired.
Yes.
We were
What are you talking about, man? I got plenty of energy.
we were kind of crazy and went to the movie premiere very late, very very late, and we drove very far away.
Yes.
But that adds all to the experience. We'll get ready to break that down for you in a second.
Yeah, we'll talk about that more in a minute. Real quick business to all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Want to remind you to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen, share the podcast with your friends, and to follow us on social media at Royal Geek Pod. Okay, enough of the business. We're getting into we just need to get into it tonight.
Yes.
Yes.
We are talking about another Christopher Nolan spectacular film.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so here's your spoiler warning for Oppenheimer. We're not playing around. If you haven't seen it, it's a good time to hit pause. I guess maybe before we even do the spoilers, if you're wondering, hey, give us a spoiler-free review. All right, here's 30 seconds. It was amazing.
It was very very.
It was,
very
yeah, it
good.
was
It
crazy.
It
It
felt
was
like a roller
enthralling.
coaster.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very much so.
Yeah, very good. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah. So there you go. There's the Royal Geek Podcast.
We'll see you next time, guys.
Spoiler-free, review of Oppenheimer. But anyways, here's your spoiler warning. Yeah, Justin, you alluded to it, but let's give our listeners a breakdown of kind of what was unique about this film.
Yeah.
Right when we were getting the tickets, I don't even know when.
Okay, yeah. So it was about maybe a month and a half ago.
Something like that.
Trailer dropped for tickets on sale, that kind of thing, right? And
We known that about this for like a year.
yeah, of course, obviously we knew about it every year, but we were kind of I was late to the planning of going to see this premiere, and it said to see it in the 70 millimeter, and I don't remember seeing that advertised beforehand, and I was like, oh shoot.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna watch a Nolan movie, we got to watch it at peak Nolan, right?
You got to
if
watch it the way he
Yeah,
envisioned.
Exactly. And so I went and looked it up, and only like 19 theaters in America had an IMAX 70 millimeter capability of actually having the movie the way that Nolan intended to. And we just happen to live in a state where it is about 2 hours away.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
we went to go early tickets for Thursday, and we're like, okay, good, we're in. But then some schmuck on the podcast had to go do some wedding stuff.
Hey, there was a wedding, all right?
Yeah.
There's a wedding I had to do. Get over it. So,
Yeah.
anyways, we had to do Friday. We
Yep.
had to do it late. It
Late
was really late.
because the early show times were almost all
booked.
sold out.
Yeah.
It was either sit in the very front row or buy 10 p.m. tickets for a 3-hour movie.
Very front row. That's Bush League.
Yeah,
Which is
So-
what we did.
Yeah, we bought
So we bought, just to give all of our listeners an idea, we watched this 3-hour movie,
it. Yep.
and it started at 11:10, and it was like roughly an hour and a half away, 2 hours.
Yeah, and the pouring down storm, rain, lightning, all that kind of
Then
stuff.
you throw in the Waffle House at the end.
exactly.
But,
But
you got to do
we
that
saw
too.
IMAX 70 millimeter.
Yeah,
and
can
it
you
was-
explain this is a podcast, it's
Yeah.
not visual, but explain what that, there's
Well-
a lot of people who are listening who maybe just watch Oppenheimer, just a normal theater, or even a normal
Yeah.
IMAX.
Yeah, so Christopher Nolan, he is a old school mentality of thinking. He doesn't have a smartphone. He still has
Good for
a
him.
dumb phone. So, but yeah, so he's all about film, and 35 millimeter was a thing of the past, like that kind of thing, right? And he still carries around that in his wallet, Christopher Nolan,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. 70 millimeter is the IMAX style of film. And he shot the entire movie in majority in that.
Most of it,
Most of it, yeah. Which, if you ever been to a true IMAX theater, you normally, if you watch a movie that wasn't shot in IMAX, it just kind of stays in the middle of the screen, and then
widescreen.
like widescreen. But then certain scenes would jump up and down. Well, for the majority of Nolan's movie, the entirety of the screen was taken up, and it's just you see more.
Yeah.
Like, for example, like the sceneries, like when they were in New Mexico, all those scenes,
Yeah.
you got to experience like the night sky along with like the desert plains and
Right.
just the interaction between the actors and
Like
stuff.
if you ever watched like an IMAX movie for like at a museum,
Yeah.
for like in the ocean, or like IMAX movie like showing you mountain ranges,
Yeah.
like it's the full massive square.
Yeah.
Like it's not a widescreen, it's a perfect square.
Yeah.
essentially, and
like the aspect ratio is
the
full.
aspect ratio.
Like everything is like it's
Yeah.
as wide and long as it possibly be.
it's hard to explain. It was
Yeah.
remarkable.
One of the interesting things that I found about it was, as well, is when they put words up on the screen and you have to like move your head.
Yeah.
Like that's like
yeah.
it's one of the weird like little
Yes.
things, because if it's something that's on all the way to the left to all the way to the right, like you can't get it all.
Which right at the beginning,
Yes.
the very first, like before you even see Oppenheimer or any shots, there's like this. It was like a flame, right at the beginning.
Yeah.
and then it had like a couple words, like a couple sentences.
Yeah,
in
it
there.
was talking about Prometheus.
Yeah,
Yes.
Prometheus. Yeah.
Yeah.
And literally, like you said, you had to turn your head as you read it, and you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh my gosh, I got to read fast because I don't want to miss the next line. I don't want it to go off the screen."
Yeah, but so
Yeah.
it looked beautiful. It was stunning. It was honestly a very stunning movie to watch. Like visually, like it was on point.
And it wasn't that expensive. It's not like
All right, yeah, no.
compared to just a normal IMAX movie, it was like $2 more. So it's not like we spent crazy money. The crazy part is that we were up really, really late.
Yeah,
you know?
that was a thing. That's what made the experience. To be honest with you,
But the theater was full.
yeah, I was gonna say Nolan puts butts in seats, man.
Yes.
like every single seat in that theater was sold out. Sold out.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was fun to be in a packed out theater again. It really
Yes,
was.
it really
And,
was. Yeah, it was awesome.
The quality of film, it was deserving for sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting. Before the movie started, we were kind of like placing bets on how the movie is going to start. Normally, with big movies, we're like, "Oh, let's guess the opening scene," that kind of thing.
Like
right?
the first thing we'll see. Yeah.
The first thing we'll see, and we're all placing our bets. The T-Roll's big thing was it was going to start opening a boardroom meeting.
Yeah,
right.
some sort of boardroom meeting.
Yeah, and
debriefing.
Shimada was like, "Oh, it's going to be some sort of countdown."
Yeah.
And then I was like, "It's going to be a slow zoom in on Oppenheimer's face." Well, I believe I'm going to get the credit for the first place because it was a slow zoom in on Oppenheimer's face, but it was Oppenheimer's face in a boardroom, and there was a countdown sequence or / number sequence of number 1 fission and number 2 fusion. So
Yes.
we did like the 3-headed dragon there, man. I think we kind of
This is why you got to listen to Royal Geek Podcast.
Yeah.
You know, like we don't miss on this.
we know things.
Yes, you throw out enough answers,
Yeah.
and something will be right.
Say enough junk, when you're
Yeah.
walking into the theater.
Yes.
We'll get right on something.
Exactly. But it was a fun experience. It was a fun experience.
No, it was freaking awesome. Okay, what else about the experience? And it was the sound.
Oh my.
Yes.
gosh,
Which we'll talk about
dude.
the actual bomb later. Let's hold off on
Yeah,
that.
that's a
But just
big
the
twist.
sound in general. Yeah.
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 The sound in general of the film.
He would hit you with these moments of just like extreme sound.
Yeah.
And it was crazy. It was it was Nolan-esque. It's what he does. He like has these moments of like these really big like moments that break away, where it's like it's the universe basically he's showing, and like he's showing either fission or fusion reactions going on, and just different things that are going, like sparking ideas and like things like that throughout the movie that were just a little bit like just like
Jarring.
hell on you. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Jarring is not the worst word to use for that. Yeah.
I just feel very blessed that we live in a state that has one of these IMAX theaters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because
I mean, it's less than 50% of the states have
Absolutely.
have one. So,
Yeah. And there's only a few others even around the world outside of the United States that have them.
Yeah.
So, like, I think there's one of these in London and somewhere in Australia, but yeah, it's like we're really lucky. So, anyways, that was kind of, for all of our listeners, we want you to know, like, that was the context of us watching this film. We made a trip out of it.
Yeah. We got out of the way for the viewers.
Hey,
listeners.
I think we're going to try to do one blockbuster, the biggest blockbuster every summer. We need to go.
Yeah.
Back to
check it out. Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll check it out on the
we'll
IMAX
do our
screen.
pilgrimage.
to that Epic IMAX.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. the actual movie.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start.
Yeah. Okay, so what I would say is like one of the biggest things that I took away was I was not expecting as much of the movie to be set outside of the actual creation of the atomic bomb as it was. Like I was
So you thought a majority of this movie was gonna be at Los Alamos.
Los Alamos and before Los Alamos.
Okay.
Is kind of what I was expecting. Like kind of like the build up to him, the atomic bomb, and then him creating the atomic bomb, and then maybe a little bit afterwards. But he goes all the way to like 1954 for the main part of the movie, and he goes even further than that at the end,
to end it,
of course. But like for the most part, like I would say at least a good hour plus of the movie was set after the actual
Good third or more.
At least because the two bigs. So setting up like the way that it goes like chronologically, they do a little build up of his life before Los Alamos when he's in school and he's meeting certain physicists. He's kind of like you're seeing him run into big names in the world like Niels Bohr and different characters, Heisenberg, all those type of people. And then you have his recruitment and his time at Los Alamos, which is a huge part of his life as well. And then there is 2 time periods after Los Alamos that I feel like were the more surprising parts that were actually included in the movie, and one of them was significantly after. Actually, there were 3 big ones. There was the them finding out that the Soviets had nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
So that was
that was cool.
That was
a
in the
great
late
scene.
40s. Was what that was, and then you have his hearing for his clearance, which was a big moment, which was a large part of this movie. It was a huge part of this movie. And then you had the hearing for Senator Strauss. That was like the last main chunk, which was at least chronologically, which is probably right around 1954-ish, somewhere in there. So that was the last chunk of time that it was. So, but it did a lot of jumping around. Dude, in general,
say that again.
Yes,
it did jump around, man. Holy smokes! It was like even like within the first 10 minutes, I'm pretty sure you're touching on 3 different time periods. Within that, it was
multiple decades.
Pretty epic.
And I think on top of just the jumping around, the change between black and white and color, also like kind of naturally throws off your mind because as we think of black and white, we generally think of as older, but it wasn't a time-based issue. As we were, thinking about
as
it.
we thought it was on our drive home, we were having a discussion about what that meant.
Yes. So it turned out it wasn't a time-based issue. If it can be believed, what Nolan thought it was. I threw out a little bit that I thought some of it was at least from the perspective of like Strauss's character was when he was describing Oppenheimer, but apparently Nolan was talking about how when it was in color it was subjective, when it was in black and white it was objective. So basically, up for interpretation or not, what was going on in the situation.
Right.
Which I'm actually surprised that like Nolan he addressed it, because sometimes he just leaves things, just figure it out, right, that kind of thing, right? But he actually
Inception.
Oh, trust me. And he actually said it. He made that statement. So it was overall, dude. This movie, the timeline was a little confusing at first, right, T-Roll?
Yeah.
Like it was.
Speak for yourself, man. It was easy to understand.
Oh yeah, you got that. As he leans over to me, like, what year were you?
I leaned over and I said, I do wish I knew what year it was.
Where
like
are
in some
we?
of these in some of these scenes, it's clear that's
as people
somewhere
are leaning
after
over me, what time period do you think this is?
But
literally.
But then after the first like 25 minutes or so, everything starts to settle in, and it's less like popcorny. It's like it's more. It settles into the story.
Well, here's the thing. Every Nolan film, it feels like, starts with a crazy opening scene.
Yeah.
That's super intense.
Yeah.
And this one didn't have just one scene that was intense. Instead, it was like he threw us in a blender with a few different like scenes, mix it all together, made you a little confused at the beginning. I'm not gonna admit, but this is kind of the brilliance of Nolan, where you kind of want to be confused, you want to be teased.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I mean, what Nolan does to the audience is he makes you think, which honestly, the people who go to the movies to just shut the brain off and watch, there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. There is that moviegoer, but the ones that go to the movies and they're challenged, like that makes the movie experience.
Yes.
So, to be honest with you,
exactly.
It elevates it just a tad bit more.
Yeah, it really does. So, anyways, it was kind of all over the place at the beginning.
Yeah. And something else that was kind of all over the place was like, I mentioned to Shimado as we were walking out of the movie, I said, like, this movie might be like the number one movie of, it's that guy. It's that guy.
Yes.
And I just want to throw out some of the names that were in this movie, okay? Because it's quite vast, all right? We had Gary Oldman was back as Truman. Which was great to see because he is such a
his one
really
scene
good character actor.
He was compelling in that one scene he had.
Oh yeah, he only had that one scene, but what he did in that scene was amazing. James Remar, some of you guys may know him as he played Raiden in the Mortal Kombat Annihilation, in the second one, right? Which I was just like, just seeing him again was awesome. I guess I should say. Casey Affleck, which is Ben Affleck's brother.
Another great scene where he was like, you controlled that scene, like you felt the menace.
Yes.
From that
Why
character.
don't you guys say who these people were in the movie?
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Let me go. Well, Truman. I mentioned Truman for that one, but then
was he George Marshall? Was that Reamer?
No, Reamer was Henry Stimson.
Oh, Stimson.
Yep,
Okay,
and
my
then
bad.
Casey Affleck was Boris Pash, which I mean, he did. You said a great role. And then Dr. David Hill was played by Rami Malek.
Yes, which was insane. Just seeing like somebody like that, like somebody who's won an Oscar.
Oh, right.
You know, just,
exactly.
Oh, I'm going to be in here for like 5 minutes total.
Yeah. Right. And Benny Safdie, he played Edward Teller, which he was in like a kind of like a fat suit a little bit, and he had a thick accent, which Benny Safdie doesn't really have that thick of an accent in real life.
Yeah,
but
the Teller character was really interesting.
Yes, he was. He was more of like the practical guy. Like he was like trying to like make it bigger, super bomb is what he wanted to do, that kind of thing. Jack Quaid, obviously, he's recent fame of The Boys, which has been great. He played Richard Feynman, and then Josh Peck from
Drake and
Josh. Yep, and he played Kenneth Bainbridge. I'm telling you, man, Dane DeHaan,
which he's the one who presses the actual button on the test.
Well, he's the one.
No,
he would do the
abort button. That's that's what his job was. His job was to. He was. That's why it was so like
the meter,
so big, because he was looking at that meter, and that's why it was so intense in that moment, because he was like hand over the button, because he knew he had to hit it if it ever went over. But there was just like it was just an intense moment for a character in that moment.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was an intense scene too.
Yeah, it was intense.
Dane DeHaan played Kenneth Nichols. Dane DeHaan from The Amazing Spider-Man.
Yes.
2. Matt Damon obviously played Leslie Groves. Matt Damon was awesome in this movie.
Yeah.
Matthew Modine, he played Vannevar Bush, which Modine from Stranger Things, obviously, but I enjoyed his character too in this movie. Florence Pugh was as Jean. She was kind of like the love interest in the beginning, and then kind of tangled.
She was
through
a commie.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah, commie. Michael Angarano. He was in like a bunch of like Sky High. He was in Sky High, Forbidden Kingdom, Almost Famous, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Who we got? Josh Hartnett. He's former teenage heartthrob. Josh Hartnett back now as Ernest Lawrence. Like you see, I'm going on and on with these names. Bernard himself from the Santa Claus was in this movie as was it Isidore
David
Robbie?
Krumholtz.
Yes. So he was
was
awesome.
great.
He was one of the better characters in this thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many more like to throw in there, like like Jason Clarke from.
Yes.
He was. Oh my God. He was a character you love to hate in this movie. Like you just like the way he was set up. He was the interrogator, the main interrogator in that scene.
Yeah, that guy was a
You know, if you are a fan of like Scott MacFarlane, Scott Grimes, who plays Steve in The American Dad, and he's also been in a couple other like major things. He was in the show The Orville. He was one of the council that was with Strauss. It was Strauss, him, and then Han Solo, of course.
Yes,
we're all in
Han
that
Solo
scene.
himself.
He was a very compelling like protagonist in that moment, as things unraveled.
Yep. Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt, Cillian Murphy. You mentioned Jason Clarke. Tony Goldwyn was in this movie too. James Darcy. So Kenneth Branagh. So anyway, all those names. It's like Nolan calls actors, and they're like, "Oh yeah, sure, I'll be there," even for it's like 2 minutes of screen time. So
by the way, have you guys seen like a comparison of Cillian Murphy and actual Oppenheimer?
No, I have not.
I mean, pretty good casting. I'm going to show you guys just
Hey,
here.
wow.
Again, this is a podcast, so nobody can see what I'm showing you guys.
Yeah.
But
Look it up. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
very good casting.
Especially when he was like fully dressed up, like he had
apart.
like the style of him
smoking the
pretty well
cigarettes
spun.
or
Yeah.
the pipe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it makes sense why everybody smoked back then. It was just really stressful.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But
But I mean,
yeah.
but I think again, speaking to the brilliance of Nolan. So one, it's kind of like what you said. Nolan can call these actors and say, "Hey, I want you to be in my 3-hour movie for about 6 minutes."
Yeah.
Sure. Right.
Matt Damon did an interview recently, and he was going to take a acting hiatus for a
Break,
while.
yeah.
And he told his wife, he said, "Okay, I'm doing this. I'm taking a break. I'm not going to film any movies for a couple years unless Christopher Nolan calls me."
Yeah.
He said that to her, and that was the caveat. And he said no sooner than 2 weeks later, after saying that to his wife, that they're going to take a break from acting.
Christopher Nolan
called
Yeah.
and said he wants him in his movie.
There you go.
And so now he didn't take a break. So he's
Yeah.
hopefully taking
Yeah.
a break after this movie. So
It's amazing. So it speaks to the brilliance of Nolan but also, and this is what, like, when, today people have asked me about this movie, like friends I've seen in town, and like, hey, what'd you think? I was like, well, I mean, it felt like a roller coaster.
it did.
But what I said is, it was so intense, and I'm trying to think, you guys tell me if I'm wrong, in the entire 3 hours, was there a single moment of, like, action? Was there a punch? Was there even a push? Like,
That's a good point.
I don't think there was a single moment of action in the whole movie. And it didn't need it because the dialogue, the music, the visuals, and the stakes, you felt everything in this movie.
You did.
And that's the glory of Christopher Nolan. That's the beauty of his films.
There might have been one moment of violence
When
Florence.
Okay, there was a murder.
Yes.
There was either a murder or a suicide. Sure.
Yes.
One of
Okay.
the two.
There you go. So a little bit of violence, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, and not that like Christopher Nolan does action films, but like in Inception and
there's quite a bit of
Tenet,
action.
there's plenty of
He
action.
knows how to do action.
Right. But he's not like an action junkie movie maker, right?
Yeah.
But it just shows you he doesn't have to rely on that in any way.
Yeah. He knows
Right?
what he's doing.
Yeah, The
Even
Dark
do-
Knight was
yeah.
amazing, not just because Batman
Punch people, yeah.
punching people.
Yeah.
It's the story.
Yeah.
And the story, and I think that's what's so unique about, at the beginning of the movie, I was confused. But, like, if he would have just done a chronological film of this in order, it wouldn't hit the same.
No.
But
you're
because he takes you all over the place and he takes you on a journey wondering what's true, what happened, who's the
Yes.
spy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Who's the spy? I mean, to tell you the truth, a very underrated part of the movie in my mind was the villain reveal and the villain build with everything that was going on with, as it was going through and it being revealed, almost at the end of the movie that Strauss was pulling all these strings
Right.
to undermine Oppenheimer and get him out of government work, get him out of the limelight, all this, this sticking moment that was this other hearing that they show a small part of where Oppenheimer had slighted him and kind of turned some of the scientists against Strauss in general and when he was a part of the Atomic Energy Commission, which still exists today.
Oh.
It's not called that anymore, but it still exists.
How about that?
Yes, this is Department of Energy now. But anyway, but yeah, so he was. It was very interesting seeing this villain reveal that you weren't really even expecting to actually see. You were kind of like not expecting there to be a villain in a lot of ways.
Yeah, yeah.
But it turns out he very much has this one person who, through most of the movie, at worst you were kind of thinking was, a like ambivalent force, and at best was a positive force.
Yeah.
And like, because one of the very first scenes they show is him, him trying to recruit him to Princeton to, run their department. Like it wasn't like he was, being purposefully antagonistic to Oppenheimer in any way.
Yeah, Strauss wasn't always antagonistic towards him, for
No.
sure.
No.
Which Robert Downey Jr. did a phenomenal job as Strauss.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
Which, if there are any Oscar noms coming out of this movie, it's going to be Robert Downey Jr. I think. Like, he did a
Think
great
so.
job.
Yeah. No, I mean it was awesome.
I think Emily Blunt has a good chance too.
Emily Blunt too. Yeah, she has a good chance. She's a supporting actress. Yeah, very good.
Yeah. But yeah, the villain reveal towards the end was awesome when he because he mentioned kind of early that somebody must have slipped classified FBI. Oh my gosh, FBI files on Oppenheimer to the informant, the guy who wrote up
Borden?
the report. Borden, yes, thank you. But it turns out he was in the room the whole time.
Yes.
And like, so you see that same scene an hour and a half, 2 hours later from when we first see it.
Yeah.
And he's just in the corner, but the way the camera was shot, you didn't know it. Just freaking Nolan, man. Just
Doing his thing.
yeah. Every time you watch a Christopher Nolan movie, it feels like you really have to go watch it again to really understand
absolutely,
it. And I feel that way with Oppenheimer. Like, I'm probably gonna have to watch it again to fully grasp everything. I
agree.
But I'm willing to. So,
Yes.
but yeah, man, the Robert Downey Jr. His character of Strauss was compelling.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so the crux. So he was one thing. So help me make sure I got this right. He was hoping to be on the president's cabinet.
Yes.
And to do that, he's got to obviously go through these congressional hearings where they review him, make sure he's qualified.
You got that.
Right.
Yep.
And it's all public. Everybody, you can watch these things. And that's why his close relationship with Oppenheimer, who was at that point in time, his security
his security clearance had been removed.
Yeah, removed. Yeah.
Which is interesting because he shot himself in the foot. In a way, Strauss did this to himself.
Exactly.
By destroying Oppenheimer, he destroyed himself.
To him. Yeah.
Yes.
And so, what does it mean that his security clearance? What's the significance of that? Because it's still like I don't actually understand what that means.
For a physicist like Oppenheimer, this would have been like someone saying you no longer have a degree in physics. Because every top secret program, everything that he was doing, he can no longer work on.
Oh, you need all these clearances to know what's going on.
To be able to be a part of these programs. Like if you ever want to be a part of any of these programs, you have to have certain amounts of security clearance. And
okay, great, got it.
It was literally that was him destroying his career. That's what that was. Him losing that.
That's why that board meeting where they were reviewing his security clearance was so important.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right, that's helpful. But yeah, it is interesting how Strauss. It's like, the movie's about the bomb.
Yes.
The movie's about Oppenheimer, but it's also really about Strauss and like him trying to get on the presidential cabinet.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if it's easy to miss that. Is what I'm trying to say. Like,
yes.
Like you really gotta, you might not catch that.
Yeah.
But that's the crux of like his desire, his ambition. So, but yeah, like he created this monster, like when it didn't really seem super necessary.
Yep.
Yeah, he didn't have to.
Because of his own,
his ego.
feelings, his ego.
Yeah.
He let his ego get in the way of getting to where he wanted to go.
Yeah. Well, apparently, and I still, again, don't. Even though they showed the scene in a few different angles, apparently Oppenheimer like embarrassed him in front of the Senate.
Yes,
at
that's
one
what we
point.
gathered.
And even though I still don't understand that scene and what he was saying and how it embarrassed him, but it gave me extreme like Iron Man 2 vibes. Just that it was like Oppenheimer, like Cillian Murphy was actually Robert Downey Jr. or Tony Stark. Like that's how he responded to the Senate.
Yeah.
And
true.
you know what I'm saying? It really felt that way, and in some weird kind of alternate universe.
Alternate universe, yeah.
But yeah,
That's awesome.
Man, gosh, so good. And you know, it's funny. We haven't even really talked about like just the freaking like
The bomb building.
and Los
Well,
Alamos.
let's talk about in my eyes. You can either take it as seriousness or not, but
right.
one of Christopher Nolan's biggest twists in any movie ever for me is that
You want to talk about the bomb now?
Yeah, well, I might as well just drop right there for a second.
Yeah.
Then we can dissect the creation of
Pun
it.
intended.
There you go.
Yeah.
We can dissect the creation of it after that. But the twist for me was like going into this movie, I was like, oh, when this bomb goes off, I'm gonna get obliterated. Like it's gonna be like the screen's gonna melt my face, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
The brightest thing you can imagine.
Exactly, and the loudest thing you can imagine.
Right.
And so when the bomb went off, it was quiet, crickets.
Yes.
You heard Oppenheimer breathing. You
That's
heard
it.
everybody's like their heartbeats and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And I was like, whoa, what the heck's going on? Like I was like, did the sound go out? Like what's going on with this? And then you heard the breathing. You heard crickets. You literally heard crickets. And like, and then all of a sudden, everything catches back up. Like the light finishes flashing, and the sound of the sonic boom just erupts.
Delayed. Yeah.
much delayed. But
Which is.
Well,
how
I mean,
it
that's
would be.
accurate.
right, which
Yeah.
is 100% accurate. But me being a dumb guy, right, just like going watching the trailers, like, oh yeah, it's a Nolan movie too. It's gonna be awesome, big, huge. And when it went off, I was like, whoa, what the heck?
Yeah.
And then it hit you, and it hit you quick.
It scared me.
Yeah.
Like not the actual bomb, but the
Aftermath, right? The
yeah,
tremor.
the tremor wave coming through. It's so loud.
Yeah.
It feels like it comes out of nowhere, and it clearly shocks everyone in the movie too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And but just the whole culmination leading up to that too, which I think we can talk about now.
Yeah.
because the recruitment scene to start the whole bomb project off,
Yeah.
I thought was incredible. How Oppenheimer's like, we got to build a town, get their
Yeah.
families here. We're never going to get the top scientists, and then they're going from scientist to scientist to scientist,
Yes.
and like they're
He's building his crew.
yes, yeah, there you go, son of a bitch, I'm in. Like that's
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But it was awesome. It really truly was. And then you see his time at the university. Was it Berkeley? Right? Was that what it was? And
Yes.
yeah.
So when he was, that was Berkeley. That he was at.
And just them going to him there and he wasn't even the main focus, right? It was the other scientist, Lawrence, right?
Yes.
And then finally, because of his communist ties,
Yes.
and then he started the recruitment process there,
Yeah.
which it was fun time.
Which it was really interesting seeing, like, the Lawrence character was very interesting to me. There was a lot, like, of little things there, and he was, like, you could tell he was, like, trying to be Oppenheimer's friend. And, like, you could see almost in their disciplines that they were a part of that, like, they fit their personalities a lot.
Yeah.
Because Oppenheimer is a theoretical physicist. So basically, like, he thinks a lot and he kind of comes up with, like, ideas. And, like, you see this in the movie, in the whole thing. Like, Lawrence is a experimental physicist, which means, like, he's hands-on. He's actually doing the experiments.
Yeah.
That's what his role is in all this.
Well, also Lawrence was kind of like the stereotypical like American as well. Like he was kind of that role to
yeah.
Oppenheimer's thinking of different sides. Like
Yes.
he was interested in communist views, but he wasn't necessarily a communist. Like so, it was kind of like a opposite
Yes,
in that
yeah,
way
very
as
much
well.
so. And I felt like it felt very well in the disciplines. Like Oppenheimer's much more like pie in the sky, like kind of like his head's in the clouds kind of a character, whereas Lawrence was very much like, his feet were on the ground. He was very grounded, and he like understood how these systems worked a lot more than the character of Oppenheimer did in a lot of ways, because Oppenheimer, in his mind, he feels like, well, I feel like I should be able to think and do whatever I want. And Lawrence was very much like, that's not how the world actually works, though. So there's very interesting seeing there.
Like, there are consequences to your beliefs.
Yes.
Yes, very much so. Like that's how.
And it played out.
Yes,
it did.
very much. Yeah, like the whole time, like it works very well, and like, and the difference between an experimental and a theoretical physicist is very much that in a lot of ways, is because exactly that theoretical is the options are boundless, whereas an experimental is very much you're tied down by what is actually able to be done.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think it felt very
And-
well for their characters.
And it was a fun moment when they got the newspaper saying that, was it a scientist in Germany or somewhere had split the atom?
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
And Oppenheimer's like, that's not possible. And what does he do? He goes to his blackboard and he's writing and he's thinking about and he's showing how it's not possible through
Yes.
some data,
Yeah.
through some formulas. And Lawrence comes in and he's like,
Alvarez just did it.
yeah, next door, we just did it.
Yeah.
And Oppenheimer's like, what? Like, that is a perfect representation of the difference of their
God.
worlds.
Yes.
Even
Yes.
though they're so close, they're so far apart.
Yes, very true. Very true.
But yeah, I got the sense that he was an ally of his for
Yes.
sure.
Yeah.
One of the best for him, and I think he understood. A lot of Oppenheimer's motivation. It's interesting. It's so interesting. It's like, and he even said it in his kind of like victory speech or whatever. It's like he wanted to beat Germany.
Yes.
He wanted to beat Hitler. He's Jewish. He wanted to beat Hitler he wanted to win this race against the Nazis. And he even said in his victory speech, he's like, wish we could have used it on them.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad that it had to be on Japan.
Yep.
But he had such motivation to do this because he was Jewish.
Yeah.
And Lawrence wasn't Jewish, but Lawrence understood the stakes of like, if we're gonna make a bomb,
Yeah.
we need this guy.
Like he,
Yeah,
even, he even used it with Isidore Robbie. He's like, you need to be a part of this. Like you're a Jew. Like you you need to
Right,
need to be a part of this to get the Germans. Like, but
Yeah.
I think he ended up bowing out of it and didn't want to be a part of it. Robbie, right?
Yeah. I think he kind of gets pulled back in though.
Yeah, no, he definitely gets. I feel like
yeah.
the scientists get pulled in, pushed out,
Yeah.
pulled in, like the entire
Yeah.
movie. Like so many people quit and then came back. Like,
How about when that guy quit and General Groves was like, "That's all right, we'll just kill him."
yeah.
Yeah, and then
Look at there's like
the
a
audience,
moment of silence.
Well, kind of, but people were kind of laughing, like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah," and then he says, "Just kidding."
Yeah.
and then we all laugh even more. But then I'm like,
Oh,
"Well,
he's
no,
not
they
kidding.
probably
Yeah.
would kill him." Yeah,
I mean, if it came down to it, national security in
Yeah.
that moment, you mean it's,
and you
it's
know,
a possibility.
and yeah, it's just like
They definitely
it's
wouldn't
so
hesitate to put you in
interesting.
prison.
The war is against Germany. The
Yes.
war is. The threat is the Nazis, and later on, of course, the threat of like the war feeling like it might not end because of the resilience of the Japanese.
right, correct.
But the fears of the Russians, wow,
Yes.
who are at the time your allies,
It was
and
very
that's
prevalent.
that's what like, just gonna say it, like if you're one of those people back then who was pro-communism, and maybe not even in the sense of like Russian communism, but just the ideas of communism.
Yeah.
You're like, well, dude, Russia is our allies. Why wouldn't we
share information with them.
Dude,
Yeah.
how amazing was that scene with his friend, the Somalia incident or whatever?
Yes, Chevalier,
Chevalier. Thank you. What did I say?
Somalia,
which is a wine.
Yeah, you know that country. Say it again.
Chevalier.
Chevalier. So that's his friend. That's
Yes.
that guy's name. And the way when he was like making margaritas or whatever in the kitchen,
Martinis, yeah.
martinis, whatever he was making in the kitchen, he was like, that was an amazing
Yeah.
scene where he's
Yeah.
basically trying to see if Oppenheimer will give him anything.
Any information. He's like, yeah, somebody is going through channels trying to figure out like, we wouldn't happen to know.
Those are freaking
Yeah.
communists.
Exactly.
And you could see it in Oppenheimer's face. He's like,
He turns around and gives him a stare.
that would be
like,
treason.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that was a crazy scene where it's like, and again, he is not a practical. He is just Oppenheimer is just let me think about these ideas.
Yeah.
But when it turns out that the woman you love is a communist or your closest friend is a communist,
yeah,
now it hits different.
yeah.
Right?
And the thing is, he was surrounded by people who had relatively strong connections with the Communist Party.
Yeah.
You know, like his wife was a communist
Right,
at one
former
point.
Yep.
You know, his love interest was his brother's wife.
Yep.
You know, like
best
his
friend.
friend. You
Yeah.
know, like all these people were, a part of this organization. And it's kind of sad for a second because it'd be like almost like, although to tell you the truth, I don't think that hearing would have changed at all in any way, even if they had been able to. But if they could have like dropped them into that moment with him being so like affirmative in that moment and being like, that'd be treason, and basically just saying no, like so firmly and like, so straightforwardly, like that would be a huge like way to show you're not. It would be like if somebody had been dropped in and just seen that
and
scene.
he admits it, right? He says in that his clearance meeting, he's like, I understand. I regret now that I didn't say something immediately.
Sooner,
Yeah. I don't know, man. That's crazy to imagine what life was actually like. Was actually like in America back then.
Yeah.
The communist. The communist scenes in here, they did stand out. Like they were, were very intense. But like, it was like who's playing who kind of thing as well. Gosh, dude, it was good. It was entertaining.
So good. Okay. Gosh.
One of the best lines for me.
Oh, okay.
It was a conversation between Albert Einstein and Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
And it's when they are doing the math to try to see what the aftermath of the bomb would be. And so Oppenheimer brings Einstein the sheet of paper of the math. And Einstein looks at Oppenheimer and he's like, I'm probably going to butcher this, but anyway, he says, the man of quantum probability is coming to me for accurate calculations. Like, it's just, it's true. Like, it goes back to the different science or same science field, but like different ways of doing it. But like that was Einstein. He was basing all of his things on calculations, right? But Oppenheimer is all in probability and thinking and theorizing and all that kind of stuff.
Well, it even comes down to like when he's drawing on the board, he has them separated into 4 different groups. Mm-hmm. Like even if you just think about that, like they were doing 4 different disciplines on the same thing. Mm-hmm. Like just showing you how different everything is. And of course, like Einstein. I mean, Einstein was an interesting character, but I feel like he was more of a plot point between Oppenheimer and Strauss more than a real like. Mm-hmm. He was relatively interesting in his own idea, but that's what he mainly was. He was a point of contention between those two men, Oppenheimer and Strauss.
Yeah, that's
true.
He
was, but he was also. It felt like Oppenheimer and his incredible cockiness and arrogance. That was the only person he would go to like get wisdom from.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
That's
saying?
true. Like even in the beginning, he was Strauss is like Einstein, the greatest mind of our time, and then he said his time. Like
right.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Profound respect for him, but he was still like his.
There
time.
were definitely like Oppenheimer definitely had moments where like these brief like almost one-liners of arrogance.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
very true.
Like that's why I'm considering it. Like things like that. Like just like little things like that. And the way he talked about Einstein in that moment was very much like dismissive of him in that moment.
Yeah.
Another
line, and it's not really a line. I might not get it totally right, but just the scene involved Einstein that really stuck with me was, I think it was towards the end, but where he's telling Oppenheimer like, Einstein himself left his country because he was German.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But he's also Jewish. So, like, he left his country when he was no longer welcome or when his country turned his back on him. And he kind of said to Oppenheimer, like, are you prepared to do that as well?
Yeah.
Because, like, now that the war is over or the bomb has been dropped and we're in the aftermath, like, you're not as necessary anymore.
Yeah.
And another scientist told him that, too. It's like they have a usefulness for the scientists now. They need them now, but when it's over,
they throw them away.
Yeah, exactly. Which is just classic government.
Which they turned him into. They really did turn him into a martyr at the end. Like it was.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's really sad. Yeah,
it was. I think for me, another one of the most intense scenes was him giving that speech in the gymnasium.
Oh my gosh! Yeah.
And
that was like it wasn't real. Like it was weird to see.
Yeah.
Like that was all in his head. You know?
It was.
Oh my gosh, dude! It was intense though, because you saw the moral quandary that he was facing of knowing that he created a bomb to drop on the Germans, right? But America has a weapon, and they're going to use the weapon. That was a big. That was.
And then it was out of his hands.
Yeah.
I think it was a little bit
Oh,
too.
yeah,
it was
absolutely.
like it was very much about that, and like like the fanaticism that they even showed in his own group, like the way they were reacting. Like you see all these people doing like
petitions and
like in that moment, like you see
cheering, right?
You
All
see
that,
like just like insane cheering,
yeah.
the stomping, the
Like
insane. People were literally making out. People
Yeah.
were vomiting. Like it was a like
it was true victory.
Yes, it was showing like this like insane fanaticism without any base in reality is kind of how it was. I saw it in that moment, like not understanding what you have done. You're just glad that you did it.
Yeah.
In a way.
Exactly.
They're glad that they beat the enemy. However, but what they're not seeing is in order to beat the enemy, they had to murder
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of people to get that accomplished, and they didn't see that.
And then here we are. This gets into the commentary and the discussion that comes from this, which we had in the car last night, right? Where it's like, and they had a moment where they're talking to not Truman, but like, what was it, the Secretary of Defense or something? Oppenheimer's on the couch. Oh, looks like my dog got a hold of the toys. So if you're hearing her with the squeaky toys, sorry about that. Where they're having a conversation like, how long do they think Japan would hold out for? Mm-hmm. And they're like, Japan will not surrender.
Never. Yeah.
And it felt like, and I think it still does feel like this even to me, as you know, this is just my opinion. It's like what I've read about the war. It's like they had to do something drastic, which is so sad.
Yeah,
but it's like
it had to come to that, right?
but it's freaking crazy. Our country did that to another country, to two cities of innocent people, and like there's also like the firestorm of Tokyo where they just like a raid, but that was normal. Like raids were normal. Like it very sad. Don't get me wrong, but like there's a lot of effort that goes into raids.
Yeah.
To drop one singular bomb from one plane.
Yeah.
Like just a couple dudes pushing it over the edge.
Yeah. And it was crazy that they said, we got to drop one to show them that we mean business, and two to show them that we can do it again. Like, that's just insane.
Yeah.
Insane thinking right there.
Yeah. Well, and like at that point, okay, so like the mentality of there was something that was going around Japan called the 100 million sacrifice, which is literally the idea of every single man, woman, and child would fight to the death in an invasion, which would be an insane loss of life on both sides, like in an invasion. And then, as they were doing calculations, like as they got closer and closer, as they hopped islands, when they went from, going from island to island to island, when they were down to Iwo Jima and Okinawa. In Okinawa, there was an average of, I believe, about 1.3 deaths per minute during the campaign.
Wild.
So like an insane amount of people, and you'd be talking about doing this for like Okinawa was 3 or 4 months long. I can't remember exactly how long, but you're talking about if you're into an invasion of the homeland of homeland Japan, you would be talking about probably like a year minimum of, and you're talking like the numbers would be insane.
Yeah.
It would just be ridiculous.
So is it better to do that and have so much loss of life, or to just do what they did? And that's the conundrum that they had.
That was the big debate that they're having.
Yeah. And yeah, man, I don't know. It's crazy. It's just, the atomic bombs changed the world.
Yeah.
And we're still living in it today, where it's like so many different world powers have these things, and
we're just sitting on them. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, we're here to review the movie, but it really makes you think and wonder about the significance of this guy and what happened. But ultimately, Nolan made a film where you're so you are just in this story. You are in this.
Very enthralling for sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
And again, we could probably talk about this all day, but anything else you guys want to discuss from this film before we kind of wrap it up?
Sound, music, score.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, the music, for sure.
Ludwig Göransson did this one, same as Mandalorian theme song. Fantastic. Every sound hit.
Yeah. Getting on to that, there was a moment where they're at one of the communist meetings, and like there's this like roar, and it sounds to me a lot like in Dark Knight Rises when when he's in the pit. There's they're like chanting, and it sounds like the intensity and stuff like that. It's right before like Oppenheimer like gets in front of them and starts talking to one of the Communist Party groups. But it just like it sounded so much like it in like the intensity, and like it was interesting seeing that intensity in that moment.
It
as
really
well.
built every scene. Like you mentioned, there's hardly any action in the movie, like at all,
Right.
And every scene felt that like intensity because of the sound and the music.
Yep.
So.
And just the drama, the dilemma, the questions, man. Remarkable. All right, boys. Great movie. Had a great time with y'all. To our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this review. Again, we could say a whole lot more because the movie was 3 hours. But we appreciate you joining us for this review. I mean, anytime we get the chance to talk about a Nolan film, you know, it's
we need to do a Nolan rewatch and just do retro reviews.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be a lot of fun.
That'd be interesting.
Yep.
All right. Well, with all that in mind, we want to remind you to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. Follow us on social media at Royal Geek Pod, and please come on back. We've got plenty of stuff that we're reviewing the rest of the summer and the rest of the year. We're almost at the end of the summer. Crazy.
Yep.
With all that in mind, for my good friends Sandy and Shimado, this is T-Roll saying thank you so much for listening to the Royal Geek Podcast. We will see you next time, you commies. Just kidding.